Welcome to Wealth Beyond the White Coat, a show where we dive deep into the world of financial freedom for dentists and medical professionals. I'm your host, Darren Flesher, a dentist with a passion for uncovering the strategies that lead to a prosperous life beyond the office. Every episode will explore the avenues of alternative investing, tax mitigation, and secrets to build wealth that the textbooks don't teach you. Whether you're looking to enhance your financial literacy, discover new investment opportunities, or simply find a better way to manage your money, this is the place where your financial health is the core of our conversations. Welcome to Wealth Beyond the White Coat, where your journey to financial clarity and freedom begins. Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation with Kelley of Clinical HR. In part 1, Kara shared her fascinating journey into the world of HR for dental practices and highlighted some of the key challenges practice owners face, including compliance issues and turnover costs. We also discussed the importance of cultivating a strong practice culture to attract and retain top talent. In this episode, we'll continue the conversation by exploring specific HR strategies that can set your practice up for long-term success, including tips for hiring, empowering associates, and maintaining compliance. So let's dive in. Do you feel like there's any specific questions or processes that they should dig into, or is it just more of a conversation to see what they find out?
More of a conversation to see what they find out, I feel, but there are some things that you could specifically look at when you're talking about HR and for your team, talking about how things are going to be handled from the disciplinary side, things are what their employee handbook says. Maybe take a look at that and see what policies they plan on applying with your team, if any. Like I said, some of them don't actually have that either. The ones that are smart about it look at those types of things before they start acquiring practices. They look at how merging culture is going to impact what the practice is doing. Like I'm working with one right now that they're looking at purchasing 7 practices as the start to their emerging. And each of those practices are small practices. Most of them don't have an employee handbook. Some of them don't have significant benefits, but they're all just very small, under 10 employee practices that they're going to have to somehow integrate into one culture while not, scaring the entire team thinking, oh my gosh, this is just going to be the worst thing ever. We want them to know that we have this best interest and that we are going to focus on building a culture that they actually want to work for. So I think digging in from that level, as far as what benefits are they going to be offering the team, what happens after they offer those initial benefits, do things start, getting cut off? What are you going to be able to do if you are staying on with them? What are you going to be able to do in the future when it comes to hiring new team members? How much influence do you have there? I think those types of things. And some doctors at that point in their career, they may not care. It may be like, I like the paycheck and I'm only going to
Yeah.
stay here for a year or so and then might drop out of here. And that's valid. If that's what your strategy is, I totally understand. But the ones that really do want to focus on leaving that legacy and leaving something behind that they can be proud of, that their team still works there 10 years later, that their patients still come there 10 years later, that's what they're going to look at.
Yeah, agreed. With turnover being such a significant cost, felt and unfelt, what proactive steps do you think practices can take to identify and retain top talent before burnout or dissatisfaction? Financial freedom is about making the right moves at the right time. As practice owners, we often reach a point where growth stalls. Instead of maintaining at that plateau, consider cashing in now, putting that money to work for you, letting it double, triple, or even more over the course of your career, and then go pursue more of what you love to do. This is exactly what I did with my friend JW, a dental practice broker who found the perfect partner for my practice, maximized its value, and optimized the deal terms. He offers a free valuation for those considering a sale. If you want an introduction and the same red carpet treatment shown to me by my friend JW, email me at darren@legacypointgroup.com. That's DEREN at legacypointgroup.com. And I'll be happy to connect you with JW to start your journey to financial independence.
So I think we've all heard the term exit interview. And if you haven't, that's the meeting that you have with the team whenever they've put in their resignation before they walk out the door, because you will sometimes be surprised what they will tell you when you are no longer signing their paycheck. But I actually am a huge fan of what we call stay interviews in HR, where we're actually checking in with the team more regularly and asking those questions before they get to the point of leaving. So that can hopefully help address any issues before turnover becomes a statistic in your practice. I will sometimes put these up as performance development check-ins. I have some practices that call them growth conferences. Some of them just call them check-ins in general or feedback sessions, and they may be different than performance, but I like to put them in one meeting if we can, because that way we're evaluating both sides. We're evaluating, your performance, but also what, you feel the practice could be doing better. I have a little checklist form for this. I put it on my website, and I'm happy to send you the link if you want to drop it in show notes, for them to
Sure.
download. It's just a one-page dashboard for the supervisor to use, and then a one-page dashboard for the team to actually fill out the week before, so that they have some idea of what they're going to say whenever they're asked, what have you accomplished in the last 90 days? What are the top 3 things you've accomplished? And they don't show up at this meeting and say, I don't know. They have some time to actually think about it and document it, so that this meeting is not like the annual performance review that we all hate, where it's an hour long and basically just looking at what negatively happened in the last 90 days. We do this more consistently. I say semi-annually, I prefer quarterly if you possibly can. And it should just be like a 10-15 minute check-in, just to get a pulse on the team member and how they feel are they supported? Is there something that they need, some extra training that they want, something that they're passionate about? Are there anything that, things that you might want to correct with them? And then what could you be doing as a leader? I feel like that's important to ask that question from both sides, and ask it in a way that they feel they can actually bring the concerns to you. That, I think, would be one of the struggles that some practice leaders face: is my team never complains, they just leave. Yes, they do, but what is your reaction when they bring something to you? Are you defensive? Are you upset with them? I did a Workforce 360 where I interviewed a team of 8, and this is one of my very first projects that I had done at the CBA firm, when I started working in the HR side. And out of 8 team members, 7 of them told me that they would quit in the next 30 days if the doctor didn't stop cursing at them. The one person who didn't say that was his wife. So
Wow.
I run into that occasionally, where it's they just don't have a very good they think, being the leader, doesn't have a really good self-awareness of how they really are as a leader, or how they are as a communicator, and they feel like they're doing things right, or they feel like I'm paying them all these benefits, I give them all these bonuses, and nobody appreciates anything. And it's like, yes, but what else are you doing? Are you
Mhm.
making snarky comments all the time? If somebody needs to take off, are you saying something negatively to the team that's there about how this is just so inconvenient, where now the team member knows what happens when they call out? Are you constantly, we want to talk about our KPIs and the goals that we need to hit, and we want that to be something that is a conversation that's transparent with the team, because we all need to have those goals. But are you really pushing the negative side? If there's a gap in the schedule, do you make snarky little comments about how somebody's not doing their job, or XYZ? Do you know how much money you're costing me? When we say those things, and the team really just feels, oh my gosh, they're just money hungry. This is
Yeah.
all we're talking about. So
Yeah.
it's things like that can really have this negative impact. And if we focus on those things before people actually leave, then we might have a chance of retaining them.
Yeah, agreed. I think communication is everything when it comes to maintaining a good team and a good culture. And I agree that if you wait till it's over to get that feedback, you haven't really grown and given yourself and that team member the opportunity to stay with the team, and you as a practice owner benefit from their feedback. You hate to lose good team members over simple but difficult conversations when it comes to self-reflection and improvement and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I agree with you on that.
And
Um,
sometimes you don't get that information if you try to wait till the end. Sometimes they don't
right.
want the exit interview. Sometimes they don't care. It's not my monkeys, not my circus anymore.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, they are checked out, they're gone. It's not gonna benefit them to give the feedback anyway, so they just keep their mouth shut. I know you've worked closely with dentists at different stages of their careers. From your perspective, how can HR contribute to long-term financial security and wealth building for dental practice owners?
I feel like if they prioritize this from the beginning, and get things right from the beginning, they don't have the struggles that some practices end up having long term. There's always going to be anomalies and things that happen. I have a practice owner right now that she's been owned her practice for 2 months, not even that. I think it's been like a month and a half, and we already have a hurricane bearing down. So there are some things
Mhm.
like that are just going to come up, and that might be problematic. And I've heard other stories of like embezzlement in the very beginning, just lots of crazy things that have happened that are definitely anomalies. But I think overall, in general, if we put some kind of focus on this and really start properly from the beginning, we save a lot of that money that you could have been taking home, you could have been reinvesting, but you were instead focusing on this revolving door of team members because you felt as a startup, or even as a newly acquired practice, that you just couldn't offer certain benefits, and you were really tripping over dollars to pick up dimes because you weren't able to hire the best team members, because the best team members are already working for somebody else with their 2 or 3 weeks of PTO and health insurance. They don't want to come work for a startup where you're saying we might get benefits at some point in the future,
Mhm.
indeterminately. We might do some paid holidays, things like that. They're wanting a little bit more security and they have that opportunity already. So why would they come work for you? So you sometimes end up with team members who are not going to stay, who are just going to use this as a springboard to get themselves a foot into the industry or just get themselves tied themselves over until they find a practice they actually want to work for. So we do end up with really this revolving door of team members in the very beginning. And that's just like with compound interest, you can have basically a compound interest there that you could have used that money for something so much better, either
Yeah.
taking it home for yourself that first year or two or reinvesting back in your practice. And so that really does have some long-term impact.
Yeah. Compounding culture is definitely a thing as well. I agree. For dentists, a lot of dentists I talk to, some of my friends and colleagues, a lot of them want to reduce their clinical hours and focus more on the business side of what they do. So it might mean less time in the office, definitely less time in the chair. What HR systems do you feel like need to be in place to ensure a smooth transition and so the practice continues to grow without them?
That is generally the point that they're looking at bringing on associates, and
Mhm.
I've heard different numbers of bringing on 1 versus 2 versus going all for it, and you're basically bringing on a team of associates. I think if you're at that level where you're looking at stepping away and bringing in an associate, that you do need to have a strong second hand in place, be it an office manager that somebody has been with you that you trust, or bringing in somebody, externally that really may not know the practice itself, but at least knows how that level of a business should run. Because I think that tends to be the gap too, from going to a single doctor, maybe 5 team members practice, to doubling that with an associate or even higher. You need people who really understand how to lead. You need people who really understand systems. You need people who really understand compliance. There's certain, and depending on what state you're in, there's different numbers for this as well, certain thresholds that new rules start applying. At the federal level, my ADA, not your ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, not American Dental Association, ADA applies at the federal level at 15 employees. And so if you're at that level where you have an associate or two, you might be at 15 employees or higher in some cases, depending on the type of practice that you're working with.
Yeah.
And depending on your state, that could be lower. Disability, like in certain states, sometimes even kicks off when you have one employee. So you
Hmm.
need somebody who is really going to pay attention to that and protect your investment, protect your practice when you're not there in the office. So that would be, I think, number one. And then number two, I think there needs to be some actual authority that's given to associates when they're leading the team. They're leading your clinical team. And I've just talked to so many associates that feel like they're handicapped when it comes to what they can impact because they've not really been empowered to lead the team the way that they could. And I don't know if that's because doctors are afraid that if I give them some kind of empowerment or some kind of authority, they feel like they can go start their own practice. But realistically, not everybody wants to be a practice owner, and there are associates out there that just wanted to do the dentistry. They just wanna show up and have a great time at work and do what they love and get to go home at the end of the
Yeah.
day and not have to worry about when payroll is due. So I
Yeah.
think that if you find those people and empower them to truly be leaders in your practice, that's going to allow you to take that time and step away and focus on other things or just have some peace of mind, with your practice still running the way that it should.
When, or I guess, what are some essential HR strategies that, regardless of practice size, do you feel like that dentists should have in place today? I don't know if these are recurring conversations you have or things that you feel like people are missing. Is there something that you feel like, from an advice perspective, that people should put in place right away?
As far as the compliance side or as far as the culture side? 'Cause that could go 2 different.
I guess more compliance. Culture is, we can definitely go down both avenues here, but I was thinking more of a compliance perspective.
Every practice, regardless of how many employees they have, I feel like they need to have an employee handbook in place. I also feel like that it needs to be, like, one that is done legitimately. I have seen a myriad of handbooks in my last it's oh my goodness, I've been doing this since 2012, so I'm about to be starting my 13th year. Actually, I think this week starts my 13th year of working with dentists, which is
Awesome.
kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was in that time I've seen so many different versions of handbooks. I've seen great ones from attorneys. I've seen terrible ones from attorneys, and that part's scary, by the way, depending on what the attorney is doing. I've seen a lot of
Mhm.
practice management consultants that give handbooks to the practice, and it's not anything that's really been vetted. It's something they got from somebody else who it might
Mhm.
have come from an actual HR company at one point, but things have been tweaked, or it was for a different state or a different employee headcount. And so you'll have things in there that apply to different headcounts that might be overcommitting you to doing something that you don't really have to be doing. I see that a lot if I have an associate that's looking at starting their own practice or acquiring a practice, and they say, I just took the handbook from the DSO. well, yeah, the TSO has hundreds of employees. They definitely have different rules that apply here. Don't do that. Or I see even on the other side where they go to Facebook and they ask people to send handbooks and they basically cobble together one of their own and they just don't understand the compliance side. So I really feel like they do need to work with an advisor, especially in the very beginning, to get a handbook in place for the practice that is really going to fit the practice from a compliance standpoint as well as a culture standpoint. Yes, I'd love to say that we all need to have that on day one, but there are some times during acquisitions, for example, where I understand not wanting to come into a new team that you've barely just met, if you have met them at all, and say, oh, and here's 50 pages of new rules we're going to start talking about today. From a culture standpoint, that's probably not the best transition for them. However, there are ways that at the very least we work together before the acquisition to where we've gone through what is going to be in your handbook. And what matters more is that you actually understand the compliance side and you're doing that part correctly. Even if it's not all in writing from day one, you at least are operating the way that you should be operating in a compliant manner. So I feel like that is one of the things that really should be something we look at from day one, and then again, depending on what state, more frequently. Most states we can take a look at it once a year, maybe twice a year. Some states like California, I might take a look at it once a quarter. California and then Colorado, which I fondly call baby California,
Mm.
that is also starting to become very compliance heavy. So maybe those states we take a look at the compliance a little more frequently because that does tend to change more often. And so I think that needs to be a strategy is that we don't just do it one time. We do put it in our minds that we need to take a look at it. Usually, and we're just coming up on fourth quarter for this particular year. Usually fourth quarter is a great time to do it because there are a lot of laws that will be enacted that kick off January 1st. There's also some that would kick off July 1st, and then depending on your state, September 1st tends to be a popular date for certain rules. But fourth quarter is usually a really good time to take a look at what you currently have and see if there's updates you need to make for the new year. And that's what's always my busy time. I have friends in speaker world that get to take off all of December, and I'm like, yeah, I'm writing handbooks all December. There is
Mhm.
no time off here. I also think if you're looking at strategies long term, another thing that we really miss, and I think that this has been very frustrating, especially since the pandemic, I think we miss the opportunity to look at market value for the salaries that we're paying our team or the hourly rates we pay our team. I have so many practices in the last couple of years that have come to me and said, I'm having to hire new team members, I have to hire a new assistant at almost $5 an hour more than what I'm paying the people who have been here for 2 years. What do I do? First of all, you can't prohibit them from talking about their pay. There's about an 85-year-old law that says that you can't do that. They are allowed to discuss their pay, they're allowed to discuss bonuses, you can't tell them otherwise, and so you do have a concern that they might talk about their pay and realize that this newer employee is getting paid so much more than what they are, and that is very disheartening, and then they end up looking for other jobs themselves. To get ahead of that, we want to look at what the actual market value is for those positions, not only for the ones that we're bringing in, but for the ones that we currently are working with. I know sometimes we have practices that give raises every year, and that's great if you can do that. We have others that feel like that's a stretch for them, or maybe it wasn't the best year for the practice, or whatever may have happened that they had to spend more than what they thought, and they don't feel like they can really give as much of a raise. At the bare minimum, they need to take a look at what market value is and know how much under are they, or is there something else that they could do? Could they offer more PTO? Could we work on a bonus structure to really help make up that gap? But take a look at not just their hourly rate, but their total compensation at the market value level, which is admittedly very difficult to do because not everyone's going to publish their benefits on the job post. So there's not always information that you can access that really tells you that. But you can, work with advisors. There are databases, there are salary surveys that you can get an idea for your area of what benefits look like and what average pay looks like so that you are paying people at or above market value, or if you are under market value, knowing you'll have a harder time finding and retaining team members, and what else can we do for them. I think that
Mm.
needs to be part of your overall strategy again on an ongoing basis, not just a one time when we hire them, is the pay for this position, and then maybe we'll bump them 50 cents to a dollar every year or two after that, and that just be your strategy because eventually, first of all, you do hit a ceiling, but then really it ends up being misaligned with market value, and then people know that, people talk, people look at job posts even when they're happy at work, they just wanna see what's out there. And if they see something that's high enough out there, they may very well decide that they wanna go check that job out and see if that's in their best interest. So long
Yeah.
term, I feel like that's more effective to just go ahead and do that than to lose a team member.
Hey, I just want to interrupt real quick and say thanks for listening to the podcast. If you didn't know, we have an associated Facebook group also called Wealth Beyond the White Coat. Over there, you can ask your questions, get feedback from group members, and have a close community of medical professionals who are likely interested in the same things as you. Whether it's alternative investing, tax mitigation, ways to keep more of your money, or even protect your assets, we're going to discuss those things in the group. Additionally, we have a private investors club called Legacy Point. As a member, you'll get exclusive discounts to preferred vendors, and you'll get access to private investments that you'll find nowhere else. Whether it's hotels, apartments, oil and gas, equipment rental, you name it, we'll be discussing those details and offering those investments to members only inside Legacy Point Group. If you want to learn more about that, please contact me or simply email info, I-N-F-O, at legacypointgroup.com or go to the website legacypointgroup.com. And Wealth Beyond the White Coat podcast listeners get an exclusive discount if you use the code WealthBeyond. That's all caps, all together, WealthBeyond at checkout. I'd love to have you in the group, and I'd love to see you making more passive income as you move towards financial freedom, whether it's freedom to retire early, spend more time with your family, go on more vacations, or just do more of what you love while you're in the operatory. I'd love to see you doing that as part of Legacy Point. So here's to improving your financial health. Yeah. You've given a lot here in this interview. If you were going to give one key takeaway for dentists looking to build a sustainable practice through strong HR practices, what would you think that would be?
That would be culture first. I
Okay.
have a model that I talk about in my Compete with Culture, and it's a model for leadership decisions. And the acronym for it is CLIMB, C-L-I-M-B. And it starts with culture. Culture is the C in the first question that I ask, is this the kind of leader that I want to be? I had realized that after answering about 10,000 questions in the last decade plus, that I was really following a certain format for determining whether or not something is the best course of action. And that always was the first thing: is this is something that you want to do? Is this the type of practice that you want to be? So for the example that I tend to use is one of my favorite clients. He had an employee who was going out on maternity leave. We had worked on their handbook. They were going to, allow for 8 weeks of time off for this type of leave. And this person wanted to do 12. And so I asked, do you want to give her the 12? He's like, yeah, I do. I'm like, okay, great. That makes it so much easier. First of all,
Mhm.
that's the first question: is what type of leader, what type of culture do I want to have in this practice? And then I go down the other acronyms. The L is legal and legislative. Can I do this is the question. Even if I want to, can I? You also look at investigating outcomes as the I. What are some things that could happen if I take this course of action? M is mitigating risks. And then B is balance and buy-in, getting the team on board, making sure this is a benefit for the practice as well as for the team. And so that's my trademarked IP CLIMB model for leadership decisions. But it
Very
really does
cool.
start with culture.
Yeah. Let's wrap up here with a couple questions specific about you and your business. I know you've got a little bit different of a model. We talked about this before offline compared to some of the big firms. Talk to us a little bit about what you do differently, what inspired the business model, and how it's been received by your clients.
So I actually took this from an IT provider that had worked with the CPA firm. This was one of the ways that he managed business. He didn't do a bill by the hour. He didn't always do a project rate. He did this renewable retainer where you bought a set number of hours. And I think his was something like 8. And I liked the idea of that because what I ran into is first of all, I don't want to bill like an attorney, billing by the hour and sending invoices for 15-minute phone calls. That seems tedious. And something that I have to keep up with on some regular schedule. But I also talked to a number of practices that didn't enjoy paying a monthly fee for
Mhm.
services that they may not use every month. And I understand that, and I'm one of those people that if I were charging a monthly fee for something, I would feel like I would have to be doing something every month with the client. I know that's a business model from a perspective of consultants that they have subscription models, they have retainers, they have things that people pay every single month for, and that makes a lot of sense from a recurring revenue standpoint. But for me, I'm like, there's other ways I can do that. Coaching programs, there's things that I could actually have recurring revenue from that don't involve me having clients paying for a service every month that they aren't using. What I implemented was more of a hybrid model of that, where I have a renewable retainer. It's a 4-hour block of time for a flat fee. The fee obviously depends on your headcount and what state you're in. And I deduct from that any calls, Zoom meetings, work product development time, if I'm helping with drafting an offer letter, or helping with an employment case, and longer emails. I tell my clients that if it takes me longer to account for the time than it took me to answer the question, I probably won't count it. So if it's like a quick text message or something, I'm not going
Mhm.
back through. I get hundreds of text messages a week. I'm not going back through those and counting every one of them to mark some kind of time. So for the most part, I try to be as generous and flexible as I possibly can with it within reason. I do give clients a year to use your 4 hours. When we get to the end of the retainer, if you want to keep retaining me, I send you another invoice. If you want to retain me, you pay it. If you don't, I don't do a contract. I don't do, where you have to work with me forever and ever. I have some things that are outside of that retainer. This is more for the advisory side, for the consulting. But if I'm doing like a project, like an employee handbook, that's a flat fee. And I split that up between a deposit and then a final so that it's not all at once. Trying to help out practices, especially startups who really need it and don't have the cash flow yet. And I tend to throw in other things to those engagements as well, like job descriptions and so on, if it's something that they need. I really do try to be very generous with the time. I really love what I do. I'm really passionate about it, and I'm really passionate about helping dentists be successful. And so I probably should revisit that at some point. But so far, it's been working for about the last 5 years or so. And that does tend to be one of the reasons why clients want to come and work with me is because I'm not charging them hundreds of dollars a month.
Yeah, I'm sure people can hear the passion in this conversation we're having here. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing all of this with us today. Lastly, how can people connect with you and learn more about the services you offer at Clinical HR?
If they follow me on any social media, I'm apparently on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn pretty frequently. If you're an email person, you're welcome to email me, Kara, Kara, at clinicalhr.com. And I also always give out my cell on podcasts. I really don't mind. It's 512-876-4866, which I guess is probably one of the ways that I'm different than some of the other companies that I don't run you
Mhm.
through a hotline. You literally have my cell.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Kara. I appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing all your expertise and background and the wealth of knowledge you had.
No,
I'm
thank you for
sure
the
you,
invite. It was such an honor. I appreciate it.
yeah, wonderful. For everyone listening, this was Kara Kelley of Clinical HR. That concludes our two-part series with Kara Kelley of Clinical HR. In this episode, we dove into the actionable HR strategies to build a sustainable practice, including empowering associates, maintaining compliance, and leveraging culture to attract and retain top talent. Kara's insights are invaluable for any dental professional looking to strengthen their team and grow their practice. And one final note as we wrap up for the year, Wealth Beyond the White Coat will be taking a short break for the holidays. We'll resume publishing new episodes in January with more expert guests and actionable advice. Thanks for tuning in. We wish you all a joyful and restful holiday season. Thanks for listening in to Wealth Beyond the White Coat. Your time and attention mean a lot to us. If you found value in today's episode, please consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform and share it with your colleagues and friends. Your feedback helps us grow and reach more professionals like you striving for financial freedom. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of your financial health. Thank you for joining us on this journey to wealth beyond the white coat.